say much. We didn't have time to say much. We were working on something else. And he used to work right here at the headquarters. And then he made a choice. I have to say a wise one. And he made a choice to become a distributor. Can you imagine being on both sides of the fence? Well, he's balanced that well. And he is a strong, strong leader. I've asked him to come because he is such a strong leader. And isn't it exciting that even though we are not in the same organization, we are the same. And because of that, we can share with one another. Oh, I love it. We can share with one another our hopes, our dreams, and help one another to make it happen. And so I'm not going to say much more because most of you know him, have heard of him. I understand he's an international diamond, almost gold. Wow. He's almost there, so we got to root him on into gold. He's on that gold train, you guys. He's going. He's going. So let me introduce to you Kevin Moore. Thank you for being here, Kevin. Thank you.
It's my pleasure.
Thank you
so much. I appreciate it. Am I loud enough that I don't need a microphone?
Yes.
Okay. I get excited and I get even more passionate. Sometimes the volume goes up. So I appreciate the opportunity to be with you. You know, as Janice said, I've known her for a long time, and I've known of her reputation and the reputation of this team. And so it's a pleasure to be associated with this team. It's definitely the team that's led the way in so many service-oriented projects that is such an integral part of what For Life is. Because if it's science, success, and service, there's no question that this team has led the way in service. So it's my pleasure to be here with you. I'm going to talk a little bit about my story because I want to introduce you just a little bit of the past, the last 15 years, and what I think is the next 15 years. I've been with For Life a long time. And as Janice mentioned, I was at the corporate office for almost 7 years. And then as I saw things internally and I got familiar with this product and I started seeing the opportunity, I made a change. But we're going to go into my story. I'm going to go way back before 15 years. I'm going to go back to the very beginning for me, and that was in this picture. I'm that little chubby boy in the right-hand side there. And that's my father and my brother. Now, this is a big part of my story because this is what drove me, my past. My father passed away a couple years after this picture was taken. He was just 32 years old, and he left behind my mom, who was 31, with 3 children. The 2 of us, my brother, myself, my sister. My sister was just a year old when he passed away. Now, it was unexpected, and it was terrifying for my mother, because now her soulmate, her life partner is gone. And she's got 3 kids, me being the oldest at 5 years old. Now, as I grew up underneath this circumstance, and the reason I bring it into my story, I had a childhood that was a lot different than those people around me. Because my mom decided that she was never going to get remarried. She said, I found the love of my life, and I believe I'm going to see him again someday. No need for me to get remarried. So she was very entrepreneurial, and she was very hardworking. Now, when my father died, she didn't have a lot of life skills. She was a stay-at-home mother. She hates that term anyway, stay-at-home mother, right? Because she never stayed at home. She's constantly working, taking care of the kids. But now she has to figure out a way to provide for those kids. So she went to school, and she got her child education degree. And she started a preschool out of her home. She said, well, this is what I'm going to do. I've got to be here for my kids, but I've got to make some money. So she was entrepreneurial. She started a preschool. That preschool started to do well. But me, as I grew up in this circumstance, honestly, I was a little bit bitter. I had a little bit of resentment because I saw other fathers with their sons. And I saw the dad who was out playing ball with his boy. And I saw the dad who was taking his son out to go fishing, to go camping, to do all these things that I wanted to do. Now, my mom, she tried to play all these different roles, and she played them well. She passed away a few years ago, and when I was at her funeral, she asked me to do her life sketch, her eulogy. And one of the things I mentioned in her eulogy is, I remember one time walking down and seeing my mom closed off in the bedroom, watching something that I thought was interesting for a mom to be watching. And it was called Winning Basketball with Larry Bird. And she was trying to teach herself how to play basketball so she could teach me and my brother how to play basketball. And that's just the kind of person she was. She played mom and dad very, very well. But still, there was something missing about not having my father there. And so, I remember when I was about 12 years old, I decided that I couldn't be bitter about it anymore. And that what I needed to do is accept what was dealt to me in my life. And I could either feel sorry for myself, or I could take the situation that was given me and make the best out of it and let it develop me as a character and as a person. But I made a promise when I was 12. I said, you know what I'm going to do? I can't accept the fact that my father died at this young age, but what I can do is I can be the best father that I can be when it's my time to be a dad. And I looked forward to that. I wanted to have a big family, because where my dad left us with this little small family unit, I became very close to my brother and very close to my sister. So I saw the power of siblings. So I said, I want to have a big family. So that was my goal. I said, when I'm old enough to be a father, I'm going to be the best father I can be. Because my whole goal is I'm going to be the father that my father would have been if he wasn't taken from this life. Now, I moved next door to these people in 1995. These were my next door neighbors.
Wow.
My mom, she made a little bit of money with the preschool, and she said, you know what? She said, we're going to leave your hometown and we're going to move, because my mom was always a progressive thinker. She said, there's only so much you can do in this hometown, Kevin. We need to get out of here. We need to move to where there's local universities, there's places you can go to school, there's a new surrounding, there's all these things that you can do, and you're not going to be in this little bubble of Heber City, Utah. And I love Heber City, Utah. But that was my hometown. My mom said, we need to move so you can spread your wings, the big, thriving metropolis, Orem, Utah. So we moved to Orem, next door to David, Bianca, Elizabeth. I'm gonna bring up a couple things about these two people. I love these two people. And I don't throw out the word love very freely. I truly love these people. They are, anybody who knows David and Bianca Elizabeth can tell you this. The way that they operate this company is the way that they operate their personal life. Integrity in business, integrity in private life. They're the type of people that Together Building People was a part of what they did far before it ever became a For Life slogan. And when I moved next to them, David Lisenby noticed some things in me. Thankfully, he noticed some potential in me. But also, he noticed the fact that I wasn't doing much with that potential. See, at this point, I was 18 years old. I was kind of just kind of going through the motions. I didn't have any direction. I really didn't know what I was going to do with my life. Still answering that question, what do I want to be when I grow up? And that happened for a few years. And then, when I was 22 years old, he came to me and he said, he basically had one of those talks a father would have with a son. And he came and he just said, what are you doing with your life? You know, what are you doing? He's like, you need to be doing this, this, and this. And Dave Lisenby's a direct man. He's an honest man, he's a passionate man, he's a direct man. And he basically called me out. And he rebuked me a little bit. He said, get with the program. Get your life in order. And I said, well, I'm going to school. And he goes, you're just going to school? What else are you doing? I said, well, I'm looking for a wife. He said, you got a job? And I said, no. And he goes, so what girl are you going to find that wants to marry you when you don't have a job? And I said, well, you got a pretty good point. And he told me that very first time he said to me, he said, Kevin, I have just started a company that's going to revolutionize alternative health. It's going to revolutionize network marketing, direct sales. It's going to be an opportunity of such great proportions, it's going to spread throughout the globe. Now, I was a 22-year-old, ignorant, kind of arrogant kid, right? And I just like,
Yeah, right.
It's going to spread throughout the globe. I'm sure it is. What's that, Canada? Possibly Mexico, right? But I believed in David Lisenby. And I believed if he was going to be behind something, it was going to be successful. Because I'd seen him in the community. I'd seen him in church. I'd seen him in our little private neighborhood. And whatever David Lisenby was going to do, I knew I don't need to know very much about the details. If this man's behind it, it's going to be done the right way, and it's going to be done with success as the ultimate destination. And so he said, do you want a job? And I said, yeah, I had a lot going for me right now. I had an application into the local 7-Eleven. And they were thinking about hiring me. I'm pretty sure of it. I'm pretty sure I was going to get that 7-Eleven job. And I'll tell you, the truth is, when I went in that very first day, he said, well, we got to kind of go through the process. Come in, have an interview, turn in your application. So I walk in to this little office in Provo, Utah. And I walk into this office, I'm like, who is this guy? All I see is North Carolina stuff, Dallas Cowboys stuff, Disney. I'm like, who is this guy? And I sit down, and Nathan Larson interviews me for a job. And one of the funny things that Nathan said to me, he looks down, he's got my resume, and he goes, let's just cut to the chase. The CEO and founder of 4Life Research told me to hire you. You pretty much can't mess this up. He said, the CEO told me that you're supposed to have a job. So a job you will have. Because I know who my boss is, right? But I said, well, let's still go through it. And that started a lifelong friendship, because Nathan's the very best. And so it was awesome to do that. So, as life would have it, I met this young lady, and somehow, I mean, she's beautiful. She might not be very smart, because I convinced her to marry me. Okay? And when I met her, I was still naive to the fact that life is expensive, right? I was still living at home, and I had my little 4Life job, and I was taking my money and just kind of playing with it. Well, now I had to put on my big boy pants, right? I had somebody else that I was responsible for. And so I married Courtney, and then I really realized how expensive life can be. And we had our son sitting back there. He's 15 years old now. So we'll be 15 in April. Now, I've got this little family. I've got my wife, and I've got my son, and we are struggling, right? And I love it how Jeff Al Gilbert puts it. He always says there's way too much month at the end of the money. I can relate to that, right? Because the money completely ran out on the 25th, the 24th, the 23rd of most months. And then what do? We ignore the phone calls, because those are creditors, right? At that point, if we don't recognize the number, then we're not going to answer the phone. We borrow, we sit there and we have to figure out, which bill is the most overdue, right? How we're going to pay, what we're going to pay with. And we had a beat up 1987 white Toyota Camry. Now, Toyotas are supposed to just go forever, right? I don't know if we got a lemon or what. But this thing was always in the shop. Always in the shop. And when it was in the shop, that was more difficult at times. Because what we had to do is we had to be masters of scheduling. Because my wife had to take my son up to the doctor's appointment, right? And then I had to take it to go to work. And then she had to take it because she had to go to her mom's house. And then I had to take it because I was still going to school. And we had to just sit down at the beginning of every day. When do you need the car? We lived in a one-bedroom apartment. One-bedroom apartment. We have a son, which means that he's staying at the bottom of the bed in the crib, right? And we struggled. Now, thankfully, I was with a good company. And I started to be able to get promoted. Now, that might have something to do with the fact that Nathan was my boss. But somehow, some way, I started to rise up the corporate ladder, and I started to turn a corner. And that corner was that For Life was no longer a job. I started to become invested. I started to become a convert to what the mission was. And that conversion happened year after year. And it came because of distributors, because of the leaders in the field. I started to talk to the people that were living the For lifestyle, that were sharing Transfer Factor. And one gentleman in particular, Dave Daughtry. Dave Daughtry, I remember when I first talked to him on the phone, I congratulated him because he reached what we called qualified diamond. And he was pretty excited about it. He said, "You know what, Kevin, I think my check's going to be 4 figures. I think I'm going to make over $1,000 this month." I'm like, "Oh, that's great." You know, he's like, "I'm doing it kind of part-time, but I'm going to make $1,000, pretty good, right?" And I'm like, "Yeah, that's awesome, you know." And now, over the space of 6 years, I was congratulating Dave Daughtry for making as much in a month as most attorneys or doctors make in a year. I said, "I've been with this company as long as he's been with this company, and I'm not so sure that my pay increase has been quite so dramatic." Now, some interesting things. I became a premier sales manager. That was one of the best things that happened to me in this journey. Because now I started to talk to the people that were out there in the field. And they started to share with me what they were doing. Now, I don't believe in secrets to success. This last thing here. There are no secrets to success. There are systems to success. There are systems. And so I was like a sponge. I was writing down what everybody was doing. Had all these different leaders tell me what they were doing to be successful, how they were approaching the business. And you know, these distributors were about as different as you could possibly be. See, at the time, I was taking care of 5 or 6 of the top distributors in the company. Jeff Gilbers, Bonnie Taylor, Ray Muir, Dave Daughtry. And as I'm talking to them, I'm realizing that these are people that come from different backgrounds, different races and religions and creeds and you name it. They're about as diverse a group of people as you can get, but they're all achieving extraordinary things with For Life. They're all living their dreams of For Life. And I started to see that there was only about 2 factors that came into play with every single one of them. And one of those factors was they were all dream chasers. Not just dreamers, dream chasers. They chased their dreams. A lot of people can dream, but it takes persistence and dedication and work ethic, and it takes patience and vision to chase a dream. They were all dream chasers. And another thing I noticed about them is they all had the ability to help others succeed. They were all developers of people, developers of leaders. And I started to look at what my observations of the market were. And I had to ask myself, I said, For Life's come a long ways at this point. We're 6 years into it. We're starting to get a lot of recognition. Inc. magazine ranks us as one of the 15 fastest growing companies in America. And I'm like, wow, this is a great opportunity to be a part of. And so I started to share in the vision. And so rather than it was mundane in the beginning, my first job was inbound sales with For Life. And this was my job, and it was exciting every single day. For Life, this is Kevin, can I place your order? For Life, this is Kevin, can I place your order? I did that. We kept track of it back then. Remember, Nate? 80, 90, 100 times a day. For Life, this is Kevin, can I take your order? And what happened is it no longer was just about the information. It was about the people behind the information. See, at first it was just bottles of Transfer Factor. Oh, you want 3 bottles of Transfer Factor Classic. That's how old I've been with this company. We had one product, Transfer Factor Classic, and then we got Transfer Factor Plus. And that was big. We got Plus, and now we got 2 products. Big company, right? And so we started, okay, you want the Classic or you want the Plus? I remember it was like 24001 for the Transfer Factor. And I remember those numbers, I just wore them out on the keypad because I just placed orders every day. But I started talking to the people behind the product. And you know, distributors and their excitement, that's contagious, right? It's infectious. They start telling me, Kevin, they start telling me about experiences that they were having success with Transfer Factor in this particular ailment or this particular problem and the things that they were seeing. But they were also talking to me about how people were overcoming big time disease when it came to the pocketbook. And how people were going from the fact that there was no money to making some money. So, that was the beginning of my 4Life experience. Nathan Larson back there, look at that, black hair. Incredible. Nathan Larson is right here, black hair. This is the George Clooney look before he became Taylor Hicks. That looks good, right? Now me, I had a lot of hair, which that's not so good anymore. They got to come up with a Transfer Factor Rogaine or something, right? And then Lisenby is sitting there to the left of me. This is David Lisenby's son, which he's got a lot more hair, but it's all right here now, right? He's got that big beard going. So that was 4Life back in the day. That was 2 rooms, Nate? 2 rooms in the back, and then they had the warehouse, and it was a cubicle jungle. Just walked in there, we were all in cubicles, and off the left-hand side, there was a few spots for the executives. I think David Lisenby had a tiny, tiny little office, little corner office, but even our Vice President of Research and Development and our Vice President of Marketing and Operations, those guys were in tiny little office sharing them. It was humble beginnings, but the vision was great, and I knew David Lisenby's vision would come and do some big things. Now, despite the fact that I loved my job, I came to some major milestones that I started to realize where my future was and what my direction was. And some of those milestones were that simply there was not enough money. And I was at a crossroads. Okay, do I keep going to school? Is 4Life just a launching pad? Because at this point I've been with the company for a while. Is this just a launching pad to get me to whatever my next career is? What I'm going to do for my living? I lost sight of my goals though. And I'm going to tell you, that's a harsh reality to wake up to. When you wake up and you just kind of get caught in that mundane, kind of like a hamster on a circle, right? I was going through the motions and I was just stationary. I was running, but I was staying in place. And I was settling for far less than my dreams. Stressed out, major limitations on what I could do with my time and my money. Now, this was the aha moment for me as far as where I felt like I hit rock bottom. I don't know if my son's actually ever heard me say this, so I'm not going to try not to get emotional here, because this still digs me a little bit. My son, at this point, he was 5 years old, and he was this little, cute, brown-eyed boy, and him and I had a special, special relationship. But I wasn't spending as much time with him as I wanted to, because I was working a lot, and I was going to school a lot. Now, he came to me and he said to me, Dad, and I remember he was just ecstatic about this. He said, Dad, on Friday, they're going to do this really cool thing with my kindergarten class. They're going to do what they call Daddy Donut Day. And I said, Daddy Donut Day, so what is it? He goes, well, you come, Dad, you bring a favorite book, and then you read me a book, and then the school provides these donuts, and we get to sit there over our lunch period, and we get to eat donuts together, and you get to read me my favorite book. And I was like, that's cool, right? Donuts, my son, 2 of my favorite things. I'm going to go do that. I started to look at bills, and life started to come at me pretty hard. And I started to realize that I was working in Sandy, and my son goes to school in Lehigh. So I started to think about commute. It's going to take me 20 minutes to get there, maybe 30 minutes to get back, because that's going to be a little bit more of a rush to get back. So that's an hour. It's an hour there, and I was on an hourly wage. And I started to let my pocketbook decide my future and decide my priority. And I called up my wife, and in this moment of despair, silly thing to be desperate over, right? But remember my background. My background was I was going to promise to my dad, I'm going to be the dad you would have been if you were here. And now I'm coming to the reality of the fact that that was nonsense. That was a false promise. Because now the fact that there's not enough money is dictating where my priorities are. So I called my wife and she says, Kevin, we simply can't have you go. That 2 hours is going to be what makes or breaks on paying our car insurance. She goes, you've already taken off sick time. You've already taken a vacation for the year. We just simply can't do it. Do you remember who went with you, kindergarten? Nana. My mom, my wife's mother went. And that was a hard thing for me because I realized that my priorities were in complete disarray. Because I was going to be this fantastic dad that I was so bitter and had so much resentment that other boys, other sons had that dad. And my dad was taken from this life. I was choosing not to be there for my son. And so I was in a bad place. When his grandmother went to him for Daddy Donut Day, it changed my mood, and it didn't just change my mood temporarily. It changed my mood in a permanent bad place. And I thought to myself, what am I going to do? Because I can't make enough money to put the thing and the people that matter most to me where they belong. And that's my priority. So I'm in a bad place at this point, and I'm not happy, and I'm going through my job, and I'm stuck in this rut. And my wife calls me up, and she says, hey, sweetie, come home for lunch. And I'm angry at the world. I'm like, how am I supposed to come home for lunch? You know, we can't afford the gas for me to get home. I'm like, I'm going to come home for lunch, and I'm like, it's just not worth it. I've got an hour. By the time I get home and back, I've got like 15 minutes I could spend with you. And I'm just angry and skeptical and pessimistic. And I'm like, I'm not coming home for lunch. This is about a week after the Daddy Donut thing, so I'm still in rare toxic form. She's, please just come home. You know, I think it would be good for you to get away from work, spend a little time with me. So, as she normally can, she convinced me to go home. So I drove home, and there she's sitting there, and she opens up the door, and she's got this big smile on her face. I can smell whatever she's cooking for lunch in the kitchen. And I'm just like, rolling my eyes. I've just got a very bad disposition. I go and I sit down on the couch, and at the coffee table, there's a present. And it's wrapped up with a bow. And I'm telling you, I was in such a bad place. You want to know my first thought? It's not our anniversary. It's not my birthday. What's the special occasion? Because I hope I'm not supposed to be bringing a present too. So I'm checking my mind really quick with the calendar. No, it's not. No. What is this? And I said, okay, this is my wife doing what she likes to call I love you gifts. And I'm like, we can't afford I love you gifts. I'm sorry, but I love you gifts is not an option. And I said to myself, whatever. I don't care what it is. I don't care if it's something I've wanted my whole life. I don't care if this is the single best present she's ever given me. I will not keep this. She better have kept a receipt, and we better be able to return it. And I opened it up, and I pulled out a positive pregnancy test. This was her great way of telling me, guess what? A second one's on the way. Now, my whole life, I wanted to have a big family. Mine was the American dream supersized. Rather than 2 kids, I wanted to have a handful of the picket fence, right? And now, I come to another moment of harsh reality. I put on my Oscar-winning performance to my wife. I turned to her and I was I mean, I was Matthew McConaughey. I was the best